Welcome back. Now we will describe the various techniques of myocardial protection, how to protect against ischemia and reperfusion effects. Now, this is just a brief history. You don't need to learn the history by heart, but all you need to know is the summary of events, summary of techniques in a more or less chronological manner. That's the purpose of this slide. So initially, closed heart surgery did not address pathologies in an adequate manner. So Melrose suggested electromechanical arrest. As we explained earlier, it had side effects, intolerable side effects. So a boycott was launched for 20 years. Non-cardioplegic techniques were used, which were even worse, as described by Denton Cooley. He outlined the phenomenon of stone heart. Hence, electromechanical arrest was readdressed again. Three research groups looked into it. In Germany, Brett Schneider and colleagues. In the UK, Herson Bembridge and colleagues at St. Thomas's, as well as in the USA, Gerald Butberg. All these three groups looked into how to achieve electromechanical arrest without the effects, without the side effects which prevailed in Melrose technique. Again, in brief, Melrose initially used potassium citrate at a higher dose. He did not use additive protective agents. This led to intractable ventricular fibrillation, myocardial necrosis, reduced cardiac output states after surgery, so it was abandoned. 20 years surgeons relied on non-cardioplegic techniques, as you can see here: continuous coronary perfusion, tropically cooled heart, and intermittent aortic occlusion. Technique 1, unfortunately, has the side effect of flooding the field, so it counteracts the initial goal of having a bloodless still field. Technique 2 and 3 require a fast operator in order to achieve it, because you are in absolute ischemic state with very minimal reduced oxygen requirement. That is almost you are at the same state of neutral oxygen requirement, and hence you require a fast surgeon, which is not always feasible at certain due to the conditions of certain surgeries as well as certain surgeons. So as we said, three groups looked into it. The initial group was in Germany. Brett Schneider and colleagues looked into avoiding potassium-enriched solutions altogether. They used hyponatremic solution. This had the benefit of stopping the myocardial action potential at an earlier stage, at stage 0. So hence you are first of all avoiding stage 2, where calcium flows into the cell. Hence you are reducing calcium load phenomena. Also you are avoiding the corrosive effect of potassium itself, so you can use a bigger dose, a higher dose, or initially you can use up to 2 to 3 liters initially, hence reducing the amount of interruptions of redosing required during the course of surgery. On the other hand, unfortunately, this has the side effects of one, systemic hyponatremia and cellular edema. You're using almost 2 to 3 liters of hyponatremic solution. Second is you're using a big dose, so if you finish before the dose actually wears out, you will have to wait until the heart recovers. Then the UK group, Herson Bembridge, looked into extracellular solution, but with more details. They used different doses. Also, they used additive protective agents, so they proposed St. Thomas solution. The benefit is they avoided the effects of Melrose solution. They called it extracellular because in this instant, not only you're using potassium-enriched solution, you're also using the same sodium concentration as the extracellular composition. So if you're handed over any bag of Cardioplegia with the brand hidden and you're asked what type of crystalloid solution is this, just immediately look at the sodium concentration. If it is hyponatremic 4 millimoles or less, that means it's intracellular solution. If it is 144 or 140 or 144, that means it's extracellular solution, without looking at the brand. The problem with that is potassium is corrosive. Potassium enriched solutions cannot be given at higher doses, at big doses at the beginning. You have to give them at small doses in repeated forms, and hence you are interrupting the surgery every now and then to give a dose of Cardioplegia. Both collectively are referred to as crystalloid solutions. In the meanwhile, in the US, Gerald Budberg and colleague were proposing a solution which can resuscitate the heart after intermittent cross-clamping technique. As you can remember, non-cardioplegic myocardial protection was prevailing at that time, and hence he proposed using a solution, a blood solution, which can resuscitate the heart. It contains nutrients and stuff like that. So it seemed only logic. If that solution succeeded in resuscitating the heart, why not use it as a means to actually stop the heart or arrest the heart? Why? And it succeeded well. It was one of the pivotal findings in myocardial protection, to the extent that latest surveys or recent surveys showed that blood cardioplegia is the favored technique in both USA and UK by most surgeons. Pros and cons. So blood has very good benefits. It contains hemoglobin. It can deliver nutrients. It has better physical properties, such as the urologic effect. That is, coronaries are better suited to carry blood rather than crystalloid. It flows better in coronaries. Also, it has plasma proteins, so it reduces cellular edema. The only problem, the allic problem, is it obscures the field. Crystalloids are more clear, it makes everything looks clearer. Also, it requires a special delivery. You need to understand what temperature, what mode, and what route you will be giving it. On the other hand, you don't need that with crystalloid solutions. The first part of the question was what temperature we will use. As a natural progress of events, as we said, Budberg and colleagues used it to resuscitate the heart at normothermia, so it was only logic to use it at normothermia first, at warm blood. Then researchers started looking into why not use it as cold. Pros and cons. So if we use it warm, what are we benefiting in here? First of all, you are not shifting the oxygen dissociation curve to the left. You have better affinity, less affinity of hemoglobin to oxygen, hence you are delivering more oxygen. Also, if you deliver it continuously, in a continuous manner, you are avoiding ischemia reperfusion injury altogether. That's what we call warm aerobic heart surgery. However, you're losing the hypothermic protective agent. As you remember, the elements of protection, second element was hypothermia. So your 10 to 20% extra increase in the oxygen requirement. This is particularly important in case of interruptions, accidents, or prolonged interdosing interval. If you have to delay, this will become more profound. So hypothermia will mask this, will protect you against this, so interruptions and delays are better tolerated. On the other hand, giving it cold. Researchers who were in favor of cold blood alleged that actually there is no shift of oxygen dissociation curve. Hypercapnia and acidosis, which occur during ischemia, will counteract that shift, and actually cold blood is as good as warm blood in delivering oxygen. And you are benefiting, of course, the additive effect of hypothermia. On the other hand, you are suffering the side effects of hypothermia, as we will later discuss in the chapter of adjunct to cardiopulmonary bypass, how hypothermia has both cellular and systemic side effects. Then the other proposed part of the answer is how to deliver it. Shall we deliver it continuously or intermittent? As I said, once simultaneous was discovering warm blood cardioplegia as a manner of giving or a delivery method of cardioplegia. Proposed was continuous delivery. There is one very famous event which is almost quoted in almost all papers of myocardial protection, that is in 1989 by Liechtenstein, when he operated on a mitral valve replacement surgery, and he ended up with unfortunate AV dissociation. Surgery lasted 6.5 hours. However, at the end of the surgery, where he used continuous warm blood cardioplegia, he ended up with no supports, no inotropic supports, and the patient unfortunately died later on, 18 hours later, just because of extension of the AV dissociation beyond the repair, rather than low cardiac output. So he then launched a long series of studies and outlined a lot of methods and techniques of delivering continuous cardioplegia. The benefits of that is you are continuously washing the metabolites. You are overcoming any proximal coronary lesions because you are continuously giving it, so the distribution is better. And as we said, you're avoiding ischemia, reperfusion, injury altogether. However, the problem, it obscures the field. It's the setup is a bit more cumbersome. However, the most important side effect, which is quoted in all papers, that actually most surgeons at some stage of delivering cardioplegia will have to interrupt, will have to stop delivering because it obscures the field. So there is actually theoretically nothing like continuous cardioplegia. You are interrupting it at certain stages. Some interruptions even last 10, 15 or even 20 minutes. So continuous cardioplegia in the opinion of some authors does not exist. You're losing the protective effect. You are subjecting the heart to ischemia. You are losing the additive effect of hypothermia. Hence, intermittent cardioplegia is easier to set up and it provides you with a bloodless field. Then antegrade versus retrograde cardioplegia. Going straight into the benefits and cons of antegrade cardioplegia. So antegrade is more physiological. As quoted by all experimental and observational studies, it protects the RV more than retrograde cardioplegia due to physiological state of drainage of the heart. So basically, if you're giving retrograde cardioplegia, the right ventricle gets lesser dose or less protected. Because most of the venous return of the right ventricle is not actually through the coronary sinus, it's quoted to be more through Sebacean veins. So you are delivering cardioplegia through a pipe which doesn't reach all of the right ventricle. Hence, antegrade is better RV protection, less challenging in the setup and delivery mode. However, antegrade cardioplegia risks non-homogeneous distribution in cases of proximal coronary stenosis, difficult to achieve arrest in severe AR, and interrupt the flow of surgery. I must here stop at this stage. So AR is a particular challenge in giving cardioplegia. Whenever you're met with a case of AR, you need to bear in mind how will you cardioplege the heart and how will you vent the heart. In brief options, you can give antegrade, hoping that the aortic root will pressurize enough. You can help with a digital pressure and hopefully you can arrest the heart. If you don't, you can then alternatively put the cross clamp on, open the aortic root and give direct cardioplegia, either immediately or after waiting for fibrillation to reduce the flooding of the field. If you open with the heart still contracting, you will flood the field. Also, you risk sucking air into the coronaries and sucking air into the left ventricle. So you can either cross clamp, open and quickly give cardioplegia, or cross clamp, wait for fibrillation, then open and give cardioplegia, which reduces air suction into the heart and reduces flooding of the field. Always, as you can always use retrograde cardioplegia as an alternative pro cross clamp and give retrograde. However, whatever the technique you are using for cardioplegia, you must bear in mind you must have a strategy for LV venting, because in aortic regurg the heart is susceptible to distension as well as ventricular fibrillation. This is just, by the way, since we mentioned AR. Retrograde cardioplegia, on the other hand, overcomes the proximal coronary lesions problem. All observational and experimental studies showed that retrograde cardioplegia protects the LV more than antegrade. as we said, so one of them protects LV more, one protects RV more, and it overcomes the aortic regurg issue. Some of the agreed or relative indications for retrograde quadriplegia: tight coronary stenosis, and of course, as we said, the aortic regurg issue. Also, redo CABG surgeries to avoid dissemination of plaques down the diseased arteries. Also, in double triple valve surgeries to reduce interruptions. Also in redo valve surgeries, adhesions may cause aortic regurg, and this will lead to distortion of the aortic root. So giving cardioplegia antegrade could be less effective. Also, adhesions may obscure the LV, identifying LV distension, and hence you are risking distending the heart while you're not aware of it by giving antegrade. Hence, retrograde cardioplegia could be a good solution in that situation. Last but not least, whole blood versus microplegia. The concept is fairly recent. Basically, instead of giving a large amount of blood and constituents and additive protective agents, which increases the volume, causes overload, instead you can give it in small amounts continuously using a special pump, as you can see from the diagram. What's the value? Giving whole blood, yes, it causes dilution, but dilution is good. It reduces the clumping of platelets, it reduces RBC rouleau formation, and it improves microvascular flow. On the other hand, obviously it causes overloading and hemodilution, and the pathophysiology of bypass as a whole. There is a very big part of it which is subsequent to hemodilution and overloading. Finally, this is an MCQ question to test your knowledge. I would like to thank you for watching this video. I would also like to thank my supervisors who helped me in setting up this educational material. I hope I managed to deliver useful information in here, and hopefully we'll meet you again in the next chapter of our Southampton reviews in cardiac surgery. Thank you very much.